All right, we are recording. Well, without further ado, I'm going to turn this session, What Makes a Great Budget Analyst, over to Andy Pavard, and he will introduce himself as the moderator along with the panelists for the panel discussion. Andy?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. And this is the first session in a 2-day training program on budget analysis, on introduction to the federal budget process. Now, when we were setting this up, we decided to kind of start it off with a kind of pulling back a little bit and what's the big picture, and with the question, what makes a great budget analyst? Because we think that that's the aspiration to become a great budget analyst. So what does that mean? What is that all about? So to address that topic, we've assembled a great panel, and I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to be moderator. I am the CEO of the Federal Consulting Alliance. I'm the training coordinator for the budget line of business, and I had a more than 10-year career in the federal budget space, where I was budget director of SBA, deputy budget director, Treasury, chief of staff of the CFO of the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I've had a background in budget, but I'm the moderator for this, and we've got a great set of panelists, and we have Michael Rendeau. You want to say hi, Michael, and tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, yes. So I am the director for the Office of Budget and Field Resources in the Office of Housing, FHA. And in our office, we're responsible for the budget formulation, execution, and reporting for over $18 billion annually of congressionally appropriated funds. And we are also responsible for the re-estimates for over $1.5 trillion of the loan guarantee portfolio that we have. Our office is a small office relative to the size of the portfolio that we manage. We have about 18 employees, and they do great work. I'm very proud of the work that they do to drive towards meeting HUD's mission. So that's a little bit about us and me.
Well, thank you for taking your time to do this. And the next one, Darlene Canty, I don't have her on the page here, and that's my fault. But Darlene, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. I'm Darlene Canty, and actually Michael and I used to work together when I was over in OGC, and then also I'm now in the AED division, which is Administrative and Expense Division. I'm just excited to be here, happy to share the little bit of knowledge I've gained. Excited for everybody on this page. I guarantee you anybody on this page could have probably been a panelist today. So I am honored to be able to share with you all and just to hear what everyone has to say. And again, to the other panelists, congratulations. And I'm looking forward to what I can glean from you all.
The next is Shalini Madden. For some reason, the end didn't show up there, but Benson. And can you tell us about yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Hi, fellow panelists. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, especially with all that you've got going on. Just tell you a little bit about me. I had about a 20-year career in federal budget. I got started as a presidential management fellow at the Office of Management and Budget. I then budget's a highly transportable skill, moved around to the 5 different agencies you'll see on the page, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, Department of Energy, National Institutes of Health, and I spent the last 6 years of my career as the Deputy Budget Director, and then the first Chief Financial Officer of the National Flood Insurance Program, all over at FEMA. And I love budget, and I'm wildly enthusiastic about it. So delighted to be here. I now run a tiny little consulting and coaching company called Wobble, so still engaged in budget work just from the outside.
And Sarah.
Hey, good morning, folks. It's so great to be here with you all, and I share Shalini's welcome and thank you for being here given everything going on. I'm really excited to be here also, especially with my fellow HUD folks. You can see that was one of the places I've been. I'm currently a partner with Summit Consulting, but like Shalini, go way back. I started off my love of budget in grad school, where I got to be a summer analyst in the transportation branch at the Office of Management and Budget, and it just expounded from there. It's such a lovely skill and ability to kind of go in and understand what is it that folks are looking to accomplish. You can't get anything done without money. you can't get anything done without people. You need money for people, and seeing how it all comes together to implement policy. So really excited for today. Back to you,
Okay.
Andy.
Okay, let's dive into it. Now, today we're going to have some themes that we'll talk about. And the first, we're going to talk about the skills required to be a budget analyst. Like, what do you have to know and what do you have to be able to do? Then we're going to talk about the experience, because we have some diverse perspectives from multiple agencies. And we're going to talk about the experience of being a budget analyst. And then we want to talk about the budget analyst as a team member. Like, you don't work alone. Nobody works alone. So what's it like to work as part of a team? And then we want to talk about career progression, because we all want to move. We want to move upward, and we want to develop and grow in our careers. Even old people like me, we want to move forward. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to have a set of questions here. And you can see there's a bunch of questions, but I'm not going to go through each one of these questions because that would take too long. What we're going to do is I'm going to pick one person, and Michael, you're going to be the first one, just to give you a heads up. And then we're going to ask them to comment on whatever question that they think is most relevant. And that way, things that Michael's covered, Shalini won't cover again. So that's what we're going to do. And we got about 6 rounds of these. We're going to take a break about 9:40, then we'll come back and finish up. But I do want to tell everyone that if you want, there's another presentation I recommend. It's called Budget Line of Business Learning Resources. And what this video does, it's a video of an earlier presentation we did. It goes through all the resources that you can use in your job as a budget analyst. It talks about CBO. It talks about Congressional Budget Office. It talks about GAO. It talks about places to go to find data and things like that. You might find that interesting. And we do have a lot of training available. Like every class that we've given over the last 2 years or so is available on the YouTube training channel. Get my YouTube terminology here, right? The YouTube channel has classes available for free on about 40 different topics. So that's a free resource that I think people should take advantage of. So we'll start with you, Michael. I gave you a little time to think there. So what do you think about the skills required to be a great budget analyst? And you can see those questions there.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Well, first I'll start here. I think a strong grasp of basic federal budget concepts is crucial. Brilliance in the basics always goes a long way. And by the way, like you just mentioned, I want to give a little plug here for the Budget Line of Business and their great training resources on the Connect page to help you build your expertise in or your understanding of budget concepts. But yeah, a strong grasp of federal budget concepts is absolutely crucial. And then, of course, you need a combination of analytical, interpersonal, and political savvy skills. You need those strong quantitative skills for analyzing that budgetary data, forecasting budgets, ensuring accuracy in the reporting. You need critical thinking and problem-solving abilities to navigate those complex budget constraints and unforeseen challenges that come your way. Strong communication skills, both written, verbal, and your nonverbal communication skills are key in conveying complex budget information primarily to non-budget stakeholders. A lot of the people that you will work with, they will be non-budget stakeholders. They're not involved in federal budgeting. They don't understand the terms and the wonkiness of it. So you need to communicate that to them in a way that they understand. And you really need to have the ability to grasp the internal and external politics that impact your agency. And I would add that you should have a grasp of the full scope of knowledge around budget formulation, justification, and presentation, and understanding the policies and regulations that govern the federal budget process.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next, we'll go to Darlene, and then we'll go to Shalini, and then Sarah. And then the next round, Darlene will start first, and then we'll just kind of rotate around like that. The other thing I want to say is if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And what we'll do at the end of this round, we'll ask the questions from the chat to the panel. Okay? So go, Darlene.
So, with my 20-something odd years of experience in budget in general, I've literally spent my entire career at HUD, and I celebrated 17 years of service as an employee on yesterday. So thank you. But what I am most excited about is the training opportunities that are available in the budget arena, because I love training. And from the first day that I came on board as an employee, I literally wanted to know what training was available. And Michael, everything that you've said, I totally agree with. I kind of honed it as I got to be a Sherlock Holmes sometimes. I got to be a chameleon sometimes. I've got to trust but verify. I got to know what that ADA violations are. I got to know, what that A11 talks about, because those things are so important. And those are the things that I didn't get initially when I came on board. However, I believe training is extremely important. Um, um, Formal and informal training is extremely important. Being able to get those resources. I love the budget line of business. When they first started, I fell in love with them because they had so many opportunities for training where you could meet people and network. Those things were really important. Also, along with something that Michael said, I think is important, the communication skills. You got to know how to present to people, but also when you're looking for additional information, how do I get this information? So even having those interpersonal skills or understanding the emotional intelligence of people and even yourself, and how do you get that? But that's too, to me, is a part of how do I train? How do I get information and knowledge? One thing that I recognize that we're working on at HUD, and we're doing a great job working toward it, is pulling budget people together to have conversations, especially within your agency, because there are things you're trying to get or learn that somebody else has already done, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. But training, for me, is great. So I'm looking at, are there resources that we should be aware of to develop our budget analyst skills? Management concept, budget. First of all, budget line of business first. Let me give a shout out to that first, but also management concepts and other organizations that provide this great training for us in all the areas that Michael had talked about. In addition, the very last thing I do want to put a plug in for is our budget line of business, federal budgeteer work group that we have. I'm a co-chair on that with Faith Ford, who is a Department of Education employee. We are working on building that community of people together so that budgeteers are coming together and we're talking about, and not just the technical stuff, but also just let's talk about what are we dealing with? What life changes are we dealing with? How do we navigate life? Because where we can put all those skills together to say, I need all these great skills, and they're very important. But when life happens, how do I keep this boat afloat? How do I keep it moving? And those things I think are very important. So I think that's how I would sum it up. So I've chosen question number 6.
All right, Darlene.
Or 7 or 8, whichever one it was.
I know Shalini's got some wisdom for us. So, Shalini.
Thank you, Michael and Darlene, for your responses. They were spectacular. I'll try not to repeat anything, though I will hit communication skills again because we can't say it enough. I'll share when you know your information, right? So that fourth question down, what should a budget analyst know? Know your source documents. Look them up yourself, right? Read A11, read your authorization language, read your appropriations language, read your report, read, right, everything, GAO reports related to your program. There's no substitute for digging into that depth of material yourself, so that when someone says the BDR budget data request is asking for X, you know what it's really asking for because you've read it yourself. Develop that credibility and depth of expertise in your program, and you will become indispensable. I'll also add the number one thing I think a great budget analyst needs is curiosity. We're being asked to be reactive a lot, right? People ask us for a lot of information and we respond to what they ask for. If you can bring your curiosity to say, what else? Here's what they're asking for, but here's what I think they need to know. Here's what's behind that. Here's what the program told me, but here's what they didn't tell me. And I notice the pause when they're speaking. How do I engage there? There's no substitute. AI is not going to take your jobs. because the work of being a budget analyst is about telling a story and stitching together information from various sources, which you're not going to be able to do unless you bring your curiosity to bear to be able to take this information
Are you ready
and
to
tell
go?
people not only what they're asking for, but also what they need to know. And I think someone is off mute. With that, let me turn it back over to Andy and Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, you're up next. What do you think on this?
I love all the answers so far. So I'm just going to kind of pull a couple of the threads. So not repeating, but with a story. At the end of the day, the role of the budget analyst is to bring together all of the information that's available, the different perspectives, and understand where different people are to be able to get something accomplished. We have our high level policy goals. So exactly what Shalini said, being curious, exactly what both Darlene and Michael said, having the communication skills, really underscoring not just what you can do to synthesize all of that great information that you've read and understood and kind of pulled together, but also pulling in and saying, okay, who are the people that I am listening to? Who are the people that I'm talking to? What is their perspective on this policy or program? How did they plug in? So you have that context to understand how you can pull all of that information together in a way that is neutral, that is not political, but is giving that best available nonpartisan information with the context of there's people that have political views. That's those are the folks that we're trying to serve throughout the country. We're trying to pull together that best non-biased information so that it's impossible for somebody to walk away from a budget question, make a decision, and say, I didn't know. So that there's the story out there of understanding how each dollar feeds in to that mission that that agency, that your program is trying to accomplish. And trying to gather that information, a really great resource in addition to what some of the what we've talked about so far. What's the evidence that's out there? Do you have an agency evaluation plan where there's actually been a study that says, here's what happens, here's how that theory of change works. Here's what happens. We spend this money on these people and these resources. They will do these activities. It will have these outputs like number of people served and things like that. To what outcome? Having that understanding of how the program works from that perspective gives you that extra ability to ask the good questions for folks of, well, what happens if we have a little bit less money? What happens if we're thinking about, is there a different policy tool that we can bring to help advance the same policy? So having the curiosity, building the relationships, gathering the information, and really listening and being aware of the context of where you're getting the information from so you can knit it together will give you the ability to ask those even better questions and answer them to help advance the policy.
Oh, thank you so much. I think this is a great start. I'm just going to violate the moderator rule and add my two ideas here, just real quick. On sources of information, one of my favorites, maybe my favorite, is the Congressional Research Service. So the Congressional Research Service, especially if you're new and you want to learn, like you've been assigned a new policy area, that is a great place. You can go to crs.gov, type in your issue, and you will get a beautifully written, incredibly well-researched summary of the policy area and the issues and what Congress is doing about it. So that's great for that. But the other thing CRS does, it has information about the budget process. So if you've been hearing in the news about budget reconciliation, and you've heard the news about budget resolutions and all these arcane terminology. So go to CRS, type those words in, and you will get a report. And sometimes they're only 2 or 3 pages because they're written for members of Congress and their staff. So check out Congressional Research Service, crs.gov. That's the second thing I want to talk about is my own personal experience. One of the key skills of a budget analyst, and frankly, one of the skills that separates the great ones from the not so great, is the ability to brief your senior leaders. And one of the key tasks in that is to develop a chart, because a lot of things are a table. A lot of things we do are tables and charts, right? Make it clear, so that your leader understands it. Because I was chief of staff, the CFO, VA, I sat in every budget briefing, and I can't tell you how many times he would, these were beautiful charts. They included every single piece of information you can imagine, and all tied, and it was complicated, but it wasn't made for executives. So learn how to put table charts, not for you, but for your executives. And just so you know, the budget line of business has a video on designing effective tables. I encourage you to go check that out. So with that, are there any questions in the chat? Let me see. I don't see any, but please don't be shy as we move to the next topic. So let's talk about the experience of working as a budget analyst. And a couple questions here. And this time we'll start with you, Darlene, if you don't mind.
I don't mind, but I'm laughing because when I saw, did everyone screw up and feel a little overwhelmed at first? Absolutely, I did. I sure did. I felt like when I came into the federal government as a contractor, I was sitting there like, they're going to realize I'm a liar and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just here. And they told me I took the job and I wanted to do this, but I'm like, I have no clue. So what I had to learn to do was dig within myself and recognize that I had the ability to do anything that was put in front of me. So I had a good group of people around me. I was working for a great director at the time, and he would show me certain things. But my first experience with the federal government was just reporting. All I was doing was reporting information. So I would tell new analysts that came in after me, I said, listen, we are reporters of information. We don't create the data. We don't make it up. It's not our information. We are reporting information, and we have to learn how to report information out. Feeling a little overwhelmed at times, I wrote down on paper here, I said, I had to learn to know myself and know where my limitations were and not try to exceed what my limitations were, because now I was overselling something and I didn't have the ability to provide what I was overselling. So I had to learn to say, when I was overwhelmed, I was like, hey, listen, that's a bit much for me. I'm much better at it now. And I say it a little differently now, like, hey, you guys are throwing a lot of balls at me. I need to know which one to catch first. Do I catch the blue ball, the red ball, the white ball? Which one do I catch? Because if I don't catch the right ball, then I'm going to miss some kind of deadline or requirement that you have of me. So help me connect these dots as far as what information is important for you, so that I know how to schedule time, and I know how, when I'm overwhelmed, to walk away for a minute, to take a breather. Sometimes it's simply closing your eyes at your desk, be at the beach somewhere, or somewhere that you want to be, and just be there for a few moments so that you can just gather yourself. And then that way we're not snappy at people, or we're not grumpy at people, because all of us are human. And I would love to say that we can take that human part of us away, but sometimes it's just there. And it could take one little thing that the top boils off because I didn't say soon enough, I'm overwhelmed. And it doesn't have to be your supervisor. Go to somebody you trust in your organization, or if you have a mentor or a coach, go to them and say, hey, I'm really overwhelmed today. That way you can kind of sort out what the things are that are overwhelming you and put them in their proper place so that you can be a great performer that day. So that was mine when that jumped out at me right straight away.
Great. Shalini.
I love that very human, comprehensive response, Darlene. And you ask for help, right? Ask for help from the people around you. If you've got 10 things on your to-do list, make sure you and your management are on the same page about, these are the 2 or 3 things I'm going to do well. These are the 3 or 4 things I'm going to do medium well. And these are the things I'm either not going to do or phone it in, because you cannot do all 10 things well. And budget attracts a lot of type A people, right? We really want to get our work done superbly, on time, in depth, and sometimes, all the time, we cannot do all that. So knowing what the priorities are, super important. Listen, if I listed all my budget screw ups, we would be here literally the entire time this forum meets. So many screw ups. I'd offer giving yourself a little bit of grace, right? So just a quick funny story. I mentioned my first budget job was at LoB. And the advice I was given is, and I started in the summer, so the first thing that happens, right, is in September, we get the agency's budget request. And so someone said, make a list of all your questions and send it to the agency for them to respond. I had 2 pages single-spaced of questions. And they were everything from like, what does the object class transportation of things do? Like, it was everything from basic budget information to programmatic information. And the agency, of course, appropriately freaked out. Like, what is this? But I didn't know any better. And it took my fellow senior examiners around me to be like, no, this isn't the way we do things. You have no idea the level of work they would need to respond to this. It's like, oh, my bad, right? Like, I just want some meetings. I just want to understand more. So admit when you're overwhelmed, ask for help, take advice from the people around you. And I'd also offer what separates a great budget analyst from an average budget analyst. I think it takes 3 years to be good at budget. Your first year, because we only do things at one point in time in a given year, right? And your whole first year, you're learning, which again, if you're type A, can be a little bit frustrating, but we only do CRs ideally once. We only do the OMB request once. We do the formulation process with the Hill ideally once, right? So you learn the whole first year. The second year, you break even because you've done it once before, but you haven't touched it in a year. It's only in your third year that you can anticipate and connect the dots on, oh, here's how I'm connecting execution data into the formulation process, right? To give yourself a bit of grace that you're entering into or are working in a field that's really complex with a lot of information, and it does take time to get from introductory to mastery. And I see the note in the chat. Can we ask a question off mute?
Yeah, go ahead. I think we can have time. Go ahead. Cosma?
Yeah, Tesmaya, hi. I really resonate to everything you guys are saying. I am a career financial analyst in the private sector. I've now transitioned to a budget analyst role in the HHS sector. So it is a transition, a transitional period for me to learn how to transfer my skills I learned in the private sector here. And I'm very type A also, very type A. So I am very frustrated with, I guess, sometimes the pace. And I've had to kind of learn to give myself grace. I wanted to ask, how have you in the past, dealt with things that are not really under, you can't control, CRs and, learning things like you only do them annually, maybe possibly working on multiple fiscal years at the same time, the work and things like that, because, pass back and all these things are kind of delayed and you're just kind of moving, going with the flow and just kind of waiting, playing waiting games sometimes for information to come through. I have found that to be, a bit frustrating and challenging just because you just really don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's something we all got to work with. Panelists, what do you think about that?
I'll be happy to just kind of jump in for like 30 seconds.
Please.
So I came in out of private industry when I came to the federal government, and it was almost like I felt like I was in a foreign land. Like, wait, we didn't do things like this in private industry. And when they started talking acronyms, and it was like, I was like, I have no clue what they're talking about. And I would sit and talk with people, and they would be saying things. I'm like, well, what is that? And they'd be like, oh, that's that. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to know that, right? No, I don't know that. But what I agree with Charlene, I had to give myself grace to learn it, but also recognize that people around you also know that you are in a learning phase. And as a type A, don't try to get from point A to point Z in a specific amount of time. Give yourself that time, because it's better that you not jump too far ahead, because you're going to miss some things in the middle. And if the things that you miss in the middle from point A to B to C are going to be the things that when you get to point Z would be foundational for you. And I do like Andy's idea of the charts. Like if you create a chart, because I'm learning now that charts are very important, because when I moved from OGC about 3 years ago, I moved to the AED division, which that's a level above what we were doing. Like they would give us the money and we'd spend it in OGC. Well, now I'm at the place where we're giving you the money. So I see that differently. And I recognize that I had to work in another area in order to see it. But definitely give yourself that grace, give yourself that time, ask as many questions. Again, I'm going to give this plug out. The budget liner group, our federal budgeteer work group is a great place. And again, to come together and just ask as much as you need to, because the more you ask, the more you'll know. And then you'll get that reservoir of information now that you need. So that's my hopefully 30 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to let Sarah talk, and then we're going to have a couple more questions we're going to deal with. So, Sarah, please, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
it was such a
Oh,
great, sorry.
and then after that, we'll let Michael talk, and then we'll do the questions. Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. No, no worries, no worries. Sorry, I thought you were done. Darlene, I love what you're saying. It's really about leveraging your budget community and leveraging the community, not just within your budget team, within your organization, but the broader budget community. And there is so much power in connecting with your program office, connecting with the others that you're working with on that human level, because we're all going through it at the same time. One thing that I would advise, and one thing that I think really makes a great budget analyst from an average budget analyst, is building the relationship with the program folks, with the financial folks, with the accounting folks, all the people that are touching that program along the value stream, making sure that you've got that human relationship and try to build on it. Go out for coffee, go get to know them as humans before budget season if you can, when you have a little bit of downtime, although that honestly, there's not been a lot of downtime. Making time for that, those connections brings that stress level down. And you can find so many different ways to work through some of the tougher problems together because you've built that trust, you've built the relationship before things start getting really hairy. And so when they see the question come on, they're not like, oh, wow, this is the 5 questions from Sarah and she asked the one again. Oh my God, you break some of that down and they're like, well, I know Sarah has to ask that question because she's got a boss who's looking for that. And you've been able to kind of build through a mutual understanding to get past things. Because face it, we're in a place where we've got 4 consecutive budget years we're working on right now, especially if you've got past year audit findings that you're involved with trying to resolve or past year ADAs that you're involved trying to resolve. And there's a lot of pressure keeping all of those years. I wish we had a time machine sometimes. Those little time turners that they have in Harry Potter, that would be lovely. We don't have that. So making sure that you're taking that time to build the relationships and kind of take some time for yourself, especially as a type A person who is curious, who loves to learn. That was probably the biggest mistake that I made up front, was trying to do everything everywhere all at once by myself. And so that's part of where you probably are hearing a lot of us talking about reaching out to the others, communicating, leveraging each other. That's because we can only get across a lot of these things working together. And it was a lesson that I had to learn. And I had some pretty big mistakes that I've made. And then I learned that, well, sometimes those mistakes are a sign that I'm working. The only time the mistakes really couldn't be fixed were those mistakes that I refused to learn something from, or that I didn't recognize what the learning was from them.
Okay. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love what everyone said, and I now feel what it feels like to go last after everyone's talk, because I'm like, oh, they said everything I would say too. I guess this is why we're on the panel. So I'll start here. I'll do what Sarah did last time, which was pull on the threads. It's what Sarah just mentioned, relationships, leveraging those relationships. It really is absolutely crucial, working as a budget analyst and in any budget, really any role, but particularly as a budget analyst, because what really separates a good budget analyst from a great budget analyst is the ability to have those relationships and to be a strategic thinker. And you can't be a strategic thinker if you don't have relationships across not only your division and department, but also agencies. Because people are going to give you the information that you need to help you develop that strategic mindset. So absolutely critical are those relationships and becoming a strategic thinker. Shalini, I've got to say, I'm so glad you mentioned that 3-year rule, because it's so true. And I tell new analysts when they come aboard, and you can see it because I was there too. You can see they feel overwhelmed, and you can see it in them. And I'm like, look, just sit back. It takes 3 years. And it was so validating to hear what you just said, Shalini, because it's so true. And I'll tell you what, if you're on this call and you're under that 3 years, by the time you get to that fourth year, you're going to be like, I got it. Um, and then for Darlene mentioned screwing up. I still screw up. But you know what? If you don't learn from your mistakes, if you don't make mistakes, you're probably not doing something right, if I'm being honest. You've got to take risks so that you can deliver good quality products and good quality work for your organization. And if you're not messing up, you're playing it too safe. You got to step out there. And I used to work for someone who say you've got to live comfortably outside your comfort zone, and you absolutely have to do that as a budget analyst. You've got to live comfortably outside your comfort zone, and so don't be afraid to make mistakes. And imposter syndrome is real. As you develop in your role, the more roles you go through, the less that imposter syndrome will be there. But yeah, like we all have felt that imposter syndrome, those gremlins that kind of come up and they get in your head and they start to take over. You know, push them aside, put them in a corner, put the dunce hat on, and you just do what you need to do. Get those gremlins out of the way. But yeah, I think that's experiences of working as a budget analyst. Common mistakes. Let's see. I would say common mistakes is not going to the. I think Shalini mentioned earlier not going to source documents, and another common mistake is not knowing your audience when you're presenting data. I think Andrew mentioned, as an executive, seeing these very complicated, beautiful charts, but very complicated for the executive level. Not when you're working in spreadsheets, not ensuring things balance. I can't tell you how many times I get something and all you have to do is just, do a little check. Does this balance to this? And that's all you had to do. So those are probably some common mistakes that I can think of right now. I think also not building relationships, just sitting in your desk, staying in your chair, thinking because you're doing this execution work or whatever it is that whatever budget work you're doing can be done from your desk without getting on a Teams call or going to someone's office and talking to them. I think that's another big mistake. You can't just do anything. You can't be a budget analyst by PowerPoint or by spreadsheet. You really have to build those relationships. And then also being a team player. Teamwork makes the dream work. You really have to be a team player. So yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you, Michael. I want to pick on that last thought you had about not staying in your silo, because that is to me something that, because you're overwhelmed, right? You're doing so much, but there are so many people you can learn from. The HR department, you should learn about human resources, learn procurement, accountants, like spend some time talking to the accountants, because it'll be eye-opening.
Absolutely.
You'll learn so much about data and federal budget data. So expand your comfort outside of just budget analysts. So we have a couple questions and then we'll go to break. So Justin said, do you have formal education background or work experience? I started as a U.S. Air Force E2, and moved to be a GS-13, but I wonder if I missed out by not having formal higher education. So what are your thoughts on that, panel?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And Justin, I would say I also started out as an E2 in the United States Marine Corps. And I was fortunate enough that in my role as a collateral duty, I got to work on finance and budget stuff. So I got to really start to build my budget experience from a very early age in the federal government, wearing a uniform. But not having formal higher education, I think if you lean on your team and you tap into the resources that you currently have, I think that will go a long way. And I would also say that, don't sell yourself short. You're in the role you are now because people believed in you and they had the trust in you to bring you into that role. So you do have the skill sets that you need to be successful in your role. And if you want to build on those, they are available through the budget line of business forums, through your colleagues, through the senior analysts that you work with. And then if you really wanted to, sure, having higher education can certainly help, but I don't think it's absolutely crucial or required. You should know that you're in the role you are now because you have the skill sets to be in that role. You're qualified to be in that role, and don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. Can I add to what Michael's saying? Because I love your answer, Michael, 100%. And I think that goes back to also a little bit what Shalini was saying earlier about curiosity, you know, and Darlene, what you were saying earlier about all of these resources. Not having a formal higher education doesn't mean that you can't learn from all of the amazing resources that are out there.
Mhm.
And if you're driven by that curiosity and driven by, hey, I want to do this better, I want to get these additional skills, there's all sorts of resources, including free resources. I'm going through a free resource right now to become better at Gen AI, where I can use it in my job. There's lots of things, and it's helping me. I've saved at least an hour a week by being able to get Copilot to do some things for me that I really hated doing. So there's a lot of benefits to being able to have that curiosity and then look for those resources through your budget community, things that we've talked about, or just even Googling and finding here ways that you can add to that skill set, and really not necessarily need to have a master's degree.
Yeah, so that great insights, and you can always just ask people, go into your boss, and if you see a book on the shelf, ask about the book, things like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break till 9. We'll do an 8-minute break just to keep the numbers even till 9:50. So come back at 9:50, and we will finish up. And thank you, panel, and see you in 8 minutes.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Hold on.
Rolanda, if you're here, do you have a question? Is that why your hand's up?
To respond about the higher education. Um, just a person that does have extreme higher education, but I found that my best resources in my career in financial management that I didn't necessarily benefit from the higher education, but I benefit mostly from, in support of what the panel was saying, is building those relationships with my peers, the networking upward and across agencies. So my best tools have been other financial managers, and I've been in several different organizations. It My education has nothing to do with my success. It has all been building out those relationships, not afraid of being vulnerable. Even though I'm in upper management, I always call my teams like, do you have time for a teaching moment? Because I don't have the time to learn it all. And so just being vulnerable and just learning and building out those relationships. So I think it's very key. While I do encourage education is good, but the thing that has served me the best is building those relationships. So with everyone, because everyone's skill set is different, and that there's so many facets of in financial management. So we can stand to learn from everyone on every different level. And as you move up in different departments, right, that language change from agency to agencies, the language changes. So I think the best tool for everyone is to build your network upward and outwards and inwards of the organizations. I just wanted to add that to you.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's spot on. So now we'll go to the next question. The budget analyst is a team member and a team leader. And the questions are, what people skills are required? What leadership skills do budget analysts require? And what skills should acquire them in that? So I think the person that's going to lead us this time is Sarah. So it's your turn to go first, Sarah. Oh, no, I skipped Shalini. I'm sorry, Shalini. Oops, sorry. I make mistakes. That's one of like making mistakes.
And did you see Sarah didn't say anything, but her nonverbal communication said everything? Nonverbal communication.
Yeah. So we planned that. I didn't really make a mistake. We planned that. No, Shalini, go ahead.
Nothing like learning in public, right? And yeah, everybody makes mistakes. It's all good. And I love Michael pointing out Sarah's nonverbals. And so I would offer the number one sort of people skills required to be a great budget analyst, as well as team member, team leader, is starting with self-awareness and self-knowledge. Like, know yourself. If you know yourself, you can pay attention to what lights you up. What do you love the most? We saw Janice's question on, hey, formulation or execution, right? If you know what you love, you can also sense how you treat the work you don't love, because we don't get to do just the work that we love. So know what lights you up, know what energizes you, know who you have relationships with and who you don't. So that you could look at, to Michael's point earlier about strategic thinking, really systems thinking, everyone in this environment, right, within my agency, as well as cross agency, who do I know, who don't I know? And why is that? Who do I gravitate to? Where can I see the gaps in me? Know how you work best. What do you need to succeed? And don't make your boss guess, right? The best advocate in your career for you is you. If you are able to say, hey, I need a bit of quiet to be able to, I got this deliverable, it's due in an hour. I'm putting on my do not disturb. I just need to focus, right? Or I need people around me. Let's all do the deliverable together. There's no right way. There's just, you need to know you, so you can advocate for the conditions that you work best in, and make it not a mystery to the people around you, particularly when you're a supervisor or a team lead. That's wildly important to share with people. This is how I take in information. So for me, when I was a supervisor, I would always tell people I'm a visual learner. You can talk to me about something, but if you draw me a picture, if you give me a chart, I'm much more likely to understand it. And if you come into my office without a visual, we're going to go to the whiteboard and draw one, because it's just how things get into my head. When you know how you work and you can tell others, you can get to the work much quicker because people know your operating system and you know your operating system. So number one, self-awareness. And number two, I would say listening skills, right? With those networks of people around you, what are you picking up not only from what they say, but what they don't say? Where are the nonverbals? Can you be camera on if you're working hybrid? And even if you're over the phone or in a conference call, who didn't participate, who was in the meeting, who has information? Who do you talk to after? Or who do you make it comfortable for in the meeting to say, hey, we haven't heard from so-and-so. We want your voice in the room. So paying attention to what people say, how they say it, and creating space for different voices in the room are critically important. Back over to Andy.
Okay, and back to Sarah. What would you like to add to that?
So I think, Shalini, you hit all of the things that I would hit. The one thing that I would add to that is that self-awareness. That can be really empowering when you pair it with the curiosity to start thinking about and then becoming aware of others. So when we're thinking about what makes a great team member and a great team leader, a lot of it is the ability, as Shalini said, to feel safe, that you have trust, that people can ask questions, that the person who didn't participate, is it, why did they not participate? Asking those questions, understanding, is it because they don't feel comfortable talking in a large room? Is it because there's something that they're nervous about? Is it because they see a problem and they're afraid of speaking out loud? And it's a problem that is a critical error that everybody needs to be aware of. So really taking that, being curious about how others learn, being curious how others communicate, and building that trust, that allows you to get the information to ask the better question, to get the better answer. And I would also add kind of my experience is growing from a team member to a team leader, helping, that is the critical step in orienting from the around I did this, I'm leading this, I'm doing that, to the we. And those leaders, those budget leaders who are oriented around the we, they're thinking about the organization, they're thinking about the programs, they're thinking about the congressional appropriation staff that they're writing for. Those are the people that are helping us come together and get that better analysis, have a better budget, make better decisions. And so really kind of focusing on both knowing yourself and being aware of yourself, but being curious and learning about others as well.
Thank you. I think Darlene's next.
She's Michael. I'm last this time.
Oh, hey, Michael.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay.
So, wow, Shalini and Sarah had some really, really great things to say. Shalini, you're really letting your coach approach shine here through this session. I'm an executive coach too, so of course I'm gonna love everything that you're saying. Which, by the way, coaching skills. You don't need to be a coach to have coaching skills, but I would say that's really helped me out a lot as a budget analyst and being a team member and a team leader. That ability to have that self-awareness and to be curious and to ask open-ended questions is so critical in being a budget analyst. You really need to be open-minded. You need to be curious. You need to be aware of what people are saying and what they're not saying. And how are they dressed? What does their office look like? Because that also communicates a lot. So really like tuning in to people on multiple levels really will help you to be a much better budget analyst and a team player. Like Sarah said, you moving away from the I to the we. There's so much more that you will get done as a budget analyst when you can move from I to we, and to not be afraid to leverage resources from your colleagues. Even just this week and last week, there's been some big projects I've had to work on, and I've had to reach out to other budget colleagues and say, hey, have you done this? And guess what? They did. And guess what? They had a tool that I could use to get through a pretty challenging thing that I needed to get through. And I was able, because I had those relationships, I was able to reach out and get those tools. And people have done that with me too, where they reach out to me and I share those tools. So really, really using those relationships to share resources. I guess that's what I'm saying, being able to share those resources. And I would also say, what if you're looking to be a supervisor or supervise other budget analysts or team leader, what should you be looking for? I would say really building those interpersonal skills, those coaching skills, those listening skills. How many of you have seen Hamilton? You know that scene, if you've seen it, you know that scene with Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton where he says, talk less, smile more. Yeah, that really is crucial to being a budget analyst.
So it's interesting because as you were saying that, I'm sorry for jumping in here.
No, please do.
But it was just interesting that when you said to talk less, I was like, I wrote down as everyone was talking and everybody said some really great things, but I wrote down one important thing is to listen more and talk less, because you find out more by listening than you do by talking, because now we're preparing our answers. And so that's a skill that I am learning to master, is to talk less, because I'm a natural talker. And when my family gets together, we all talk each other to death, but we try to be like, okay, my turn, I'm in. But I'm learning that skill. So one thing that jumped out at me as when the question about, as a budget analyst supervising other analysts, what should I be looking for in an analyst? And I wrote down, don't look for yourself and others, because it's important that you have to see the value in everyone on your team. Because if you're trying to create a mini me in the office, then we don't need a lot of mini me's. What we absolutely need is a group of people that can come together. And how do we make this puzzle look great? Everybody's not going to be an outside piece. Everybody's not going to be an inside piece, but bringing every skill set, and even personalities are important. Like, everybody's not going to just be the let's go get it. Somebody needs to be the, hey, wait, slow the horse down. Somebody needs to be kind of like the overanalyzer who's going to overanalyze everything, but you got to pull them back. And so I appreciate that. There are visionaries in the group. Just because I'm a leader doesn't mean I'm the only one with vision in the group. Someone else has a great idea too. Creating safe places for people to come to you and have the tough conversations. Hey, I messed up, or I'm really not comfortable with this project you gave me, or I'm uncomfortable with something, or even just something's happening in their life. People need to be able to know that they can come to you, whether you're a team lead, whether you're a supervisor, even sometimes as someone who's just a coworker. You need to be able to go and talk those things through. Again, so that those are the things that kind of jumped out at me mainly, was just don't look for yourself and others. And you can't expect someone to be exactly like you. We all do work differently. I think Shalini said, like, everybody has a way that they learn. Like, I'm a visual learner too, but even if I'm talking, I create these pictures in my mind when people are talking so that it makes sense to me as well. So, yep. And if I were going to ask somebody to go in and acquire a skill, I would honestly ask them, tell me what your passion is about budget. And if that's a passion, yeah, you can go and get skills there. What is the thing you least like about budget? Then maybe you need to go and get more skills in that area. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the next question. Let's talk about career progression a little bit. And what is your advice for becoming a great budget analyst? That first question, I think, is the real core of it. And so, who goes first this time? I think it's Sarah. Go ahead.
No worries. And I think, honestly, all of the points that the panel has been making and you all have been making in the chat and with your questions, this is really the advice for becoming a great budget analyst too. It's being curious. It's when we think about standing out and advancing in the brilliant career path. Michael, you said something earlier, being brilliant in the basics. No, Shalini said, knowing your stuff. Darlene said, knowing the people. These are the ways that you can really understand being that good listener and synthesizing all of that information so that it is relevant and resonates to whoever needs to make the decision, whether that is your boss, whether that's the agency head, or whether that's going up in a congressional budget justification, or it's going to an auditor. Being able to have that skill set to put together the story in a way that is honest, accurate, short, and providing the information to somebody who needs to make the decision. I'm really going to focus a little bit from my career path, because I think what it shows is there's not a straight, direct career path for a lot of us. There's a lot of turns and twists and things like that. For different folks, it's something where you might be coming from a program office. You might be coming from the Air Force or the Marines. You may be coming from, straight out of a degree program and you've got your first budget analyst job. The best thing that I learned, I came to budgeting, like I said, when I was in grad school, I went to the private sector first. I had student loans and I couldn't negotiate enough money to live in DC and feel comfortable about my 10-year repayment plan. And I was bound and determined to pay them off in 10 years. So I went to the private sector and wanted to get some learning there. That was actually a great move for me because it gave me insight into how people far outside the federal budget community think about these programs. I remember having some knockdown, drag out, I would say they're fights, but, discussions about public policy, discussions about federal budgeting and how resources are put to use. And then I realized, why are we fighting being able to tell the story? Having worked even for a summer within OMB, I was able to tell different stories so that it influenced folks that lived in Portland with me. So having that private sector experience, I think it was critical. I also made sure I did come back. I went to OMB, but then I also made sure I took advantage of details. I started off in the Commerce branch where I was working on federal communications and federal policy around telecommunications. Broadband was a big thing. Learned a lot of really great stuff about that. Spectrum was a great thing. Got a lot of really good learning on that. But I realized what really made me excited was the problem solving. It wasn't a particular area. So I didn't want to stay in commerce. I wanted a breadth of different policy issues. I think going back to what Shalini said about, finding what makes you glow inside, right? For me, it was having insight over all sorts of different policies. So that drove me to going into federal credit. Awesome move for me. I loved it. It was highly technical, but it also allowed me to learn about education, about energy policy, around small business, around economic development. I got to go back to my international development roots and think about that because there were programs that did all of these things. And then I realized, what really drove me, what I wanted to do more, and this is how I became budget director at HUD, is I wanted to see what it was like at an agency. And so I took that and I moved, talked to a lot of folks, and I had a chance to do a detail at HUD as the budget director for a cabinet level agency. That was a huge leap. It was a big risk. And it was one of the best decisions that I ever made because two things. One, I got to go and see what it's really like at an agency and really grow and work with a ton of great people for housing policy, which I truly adore and love. And at the same time, it gave me the humility of, wow, all these things that I thought I was making really good decisions on at OMB, and I was issuing all these policies, and I thought I was being inclusive, and I thought I was getting, honest feedback from agencies to inform some of these, policies. I was at HUD and I had to live with, and I had to figure out how to implement that. So it was a form of humility, a form of karma as well, because I had to implement the policies. And I'm like, wow, there's a big difference between what the policy looks like and what the requirements look like writ large and what it's like to actually practically apply them to programs at the agency level. I then took that same desire and I moved to local government for 3 years. And that was also a really great experience because I was able to get back to a breadth of different types of issues and policies that I was working on from a financial management and budget lens as the CFO for a county. But I also got to be implementing those same policies that at HUD we had funds that were coming from HUD to the county that we were in charge of, I was living with some of those policies. So it was a lot of learning about how to really bring together perspectives from the different experiences, being able to go on details, being able to say yes when an opportunity comes up, taking that risk, I think would be the number one thing, because each of these places, I was able to build on what I learned at the other place. I was able to add to a broader perspective. And now, I like Shalini, I'm a little bit different. I'm still working on federal budget. I'm still working on federal financial management. But I'm doing so having had the benefit of working in the federal government at OMB, at an agency, at two different agencies. I did a detail at DOJ, at being able to work at the local level, working with a lot of other local governments to get the perspective that then feeds into not just what are opportunities for me to learn and progress my own career, but what are ways I can take some of those connections and help bring others along in their career path and opening doors where I can for them.
Thank you, Sarah. We have about 4 minutes to before we have to close out, and I'll turn it over to Janice to close out in about 4 minutes. So I think everybody, Shalini, you have a comment here. You give us a quick insight, and then Michael and Darlene.
Sure. I answered in the chat. I'll just quickly say career paths are not linear. Like what I didn't say in my intro is I worked part-time. I worked part-time for 7 years at 3 different agencies, and those jobs were created for me, right? So think about the life you want to live, not the job you want, the life you want to live, considering your commute, your parents, your kids, your pets, your garden, whatever it is, and then have to ask. Best advocate for you is you. Ask for your job to fit into that life.
Oh,
over.
Okay, Michael, and then Darlene.
Yeah, I would just quickly say, like Sarah said, like Shalini just said, and my career path was not linear at all. I started off as a musician in the United States Marine Corps, and now here I am, the budget director for the largest program office in the Office of Housing and FHA, which is probably the largest mortgage insurer in the world, if not among the largest mortgage insurers in the world. But yeah, I would say, like they said, stay curious. I think it was Shalini who said, find out how you can identify the life you want to live. Identify the life you want to live and work your career into that. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time because I know we only have a few more minutes, so I'll turn it over to Darlene. But I would say stay curious, find the life you want to live and build your career around that. And don't be afraid to take risks and take on new challenges.
Awesome. I hope that I can make this like 30 to 45 seconds real quick.
Right.
One thing I want to do is there a government-wide mentor-mentee program for budget analysts? If you would follow the federal budgeteer work group that has been formed, we are developing a mentor-mentee program so that it is department-wide or agencies-wide. So we're working on that if anyone is interested. And then the other question was about a detail. I saw those coming up. I literally asked for the detail that I'm on now. I'm actually detailed out in the executive office at HUD. I asked for the detail. So what we've been hearing about these relationships, just ask, hey, is there a detail opportunity in your office? And don't be afraid to ask, because it took me about 3 years to get the detail, but I kept asking. I was like, you're only going to get a no, but you get a yes eventually. So for as far as details, I know HUD has a site where you can go and see where details are available, but just ask as you develop those relationships. So that's what I would advise. And remember the federal budget line of business, federal budgeteer work group we're developing.
So I'll just add my quick thing. I think building your network through engagement with professional associations outside of the government is really important. I know of 2 promotions that I got during my career was from people I met at conferences. So, building that network of allies and just the intel of knowing what's going on in the community and the profession, that's really, really important. I would say that. The last thing I'll say before, and then I'll turn it over to Janice, is if you want to move up, start working up. In other words, don't just do your job, because that gets you rehired at your job. Think of ways to start acting like the higher grade person. You know, seek leadership of projects, seek special research projects, act up. Okay, Janice. First, I want to personally thank the panelists. I hadn't met Darlene before. It's so great to talk to you and Michael. Really great, and my old friends Shalini and Sarah. So thank you again. You'll see Sarah and teaching in some classes tomorrow, and Shalini is going to teach for us in a class later this month. So I hope. So thank you so much. Janice, let you close us out.
Woo, wasn't that amazing, everyone? Where are your emojis? Let's give the panelists your hearts, your likes. How about a hand clap? Yes, 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 yes. On behalf of Budget Line of Business, thank you so much for joining us. Just a reminder, after the forum on tomorrow, there will be a post survey that will be emailed to you. Please let us know, how did we do for the forum, what training you're interested in, and any area you believe that we can improve. Our next session will be at 10:30. Is the intro to the OMBA 11. I put a link there. If you didn't register, you can click on the link and join us. So thank you, and I hope to see you all on the inside at the next session. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you. Have a great
No, thank you.
day.
Thank you.